Metal Gear Month on Super Beanie-man Gaming.
Of fresh blood on the steps, Snake looked up and saw that there was a direct line from the balcony rail to where he was standing. Obviously he hadn't killed Sniper Wolf, but he certainly winged her. Snake turned around with the intention of running back to Merrill, but his path was blocked by the sudden appearance of dozens of troopers fast roping down lines from the second floor, ninja style. Each man had a FAMAS assault rifle point. Oh, hey. I was just reading Metal Gear Solid by Raymond Benson. It's a novel adaptation of the original Metal Gear Solid game on PS1. It's pretty cool. It's fairly faithful, but it does take a few liberties. But overall, it's a nice read. Yeah. But we haven't come here for books. All we want here is games. So, yeah. As part of Metal Gear Month, I thought I would do something a bit different for my usual Sunday reviews. Instead of just picking one game from Metal Gear, because there's an absolute shitload of games, I thought I would just go through each of the main games in the series, as well as a few spin-offs, and give a short sort of mini review of each one. That way I get to cover all the games in this great franchise that I really do enjoy. So, just to point out, I haven't actually played all of them. There are a few, like the GBA one and the newest one, Metal Gear Survive, which I haven't actually played. So, for ones that I haven't played, their section will be a bit shorter than the ones that I have, because obviously I've got more to talk about on those. Yeah, so without further ado, let's work our way through this pile. And start at the beginning, which would be Metal Gear on the MSX. Now, obviously, I haven't got that console. That console, I think, was Japan exclusive. I don't ever remember seeing it when I was little. So the first time I actually played Metal Gear and Metal Gear Solid Snake would have been on Metal Gear Solid 3's Subsistence. Yeah, weird words for their subtitles. The Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence version of Snake Eater, which was the second release that contained like a few more discs than normal. One of them was, I think, a theatre mode that you had. One of them had online on it, and the second disc also had a few bonus games on there. One of which was the Snake Ape Escape game, which was really cool. But it also had the original two Metal Gear games on there. And that's when I first played it. I do think those versions are slightly altered to what the original ones were, because I think they've changed a few character names and a few plot details in those. But overall, gameplay-wise, it's still the same game. Now, for me, obviously, this was Metal Gear 3 at this point, so I'd already played a few of the Metal Gears, and going back in time sort of thing to play these was a bit rough around the edges. But Metal Gear 1, I would say, is still a great game. There is a lot in that Metal Gear Solid sort of took. Obviously, the gameplay is very much the same. You know, you've got that same top-down view. There are some side-scrolling bits every now and then, but the majority of the game is top-down. You go around rescuing hostages in that game, whereas in Metal Gear Solid you would just fail to rescue DARPA Chief and President Baker. In this one you have a few hostages. I think they're like the Resistance Group or something, and one of those was Grey Fox, but this is before he turned into that cyborg ninja and was trying to kill you. So yeah, you start off rescuing those. As you run around, like in Metal Gear Solid, you don't start with any weapons. I think the only thing you have again is the cigarettes. So you have to just sort of explore the environment. You find a pistol in the Jeep truck, just like in Metal Gear Solid, so they kind of threw back into the original on Metal Gear Solid. There's things like cards, level up cards for doors, so you might find a level 2 door, but you've only got level 1 cards, so you need to find all the separate cards to be able to progress. And that's kind of like what Metal Gear Solid was. The weapons are sort of the same. You even get a Nikita missile launcher, but it's called like a remote control rocket launcher or something like that in this game. And you have to do the same sort of thing in Metal Gear Solid 1, where you need to destroy a generator that's powering an electric floor. So you do that with the remote control missile. And you have to do that a few times. There's a few places in Metal Gear where you do that sort of thing. But yeah, it's all there. There's security cameras to dodge. There's guards to avoid. There's a weird bit with loads of scorpions a bit later on in the game, which was kind of strange. But they can poison you, and you have to find an antidote to cure yourself. So there's all these sort of elements that were in Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 that were based in these games. There's some great bits with the cardboard box. You have to use that to get past this corridor full of cameras that sort of slide up and down along this rail. I would have kind of liked those to have been in Metal Gear Solid itself, because the cameras in that game are just static. They only sort of turn on a spot. You know, you've got rations, there's mines, there's a pistol, you get a suppressor later on, the codec's still there. This is sort of rookie Solid Snake at this point, and I think the Colonel type figure in this game was Big Boss, so he's sort of guiding you through the mission, and it's basically to rescue the Resistance members and stop them from using this Metal Gear to do a nuclear strike. So you work your way through the game. I think it ends with the revelation that Big Boss is actually the bad guy who's behind all this. And you sort of have a fight with Metal Gear, but if I remember right, it's not like a Metal Gear fight where it's running around or anything. You sort of just plant C4 on its legs, and these two cameras at the top sort of shoot these red laser beams down at you, and you sort of have to just dodge. And then once you blow it up, I think the base, there's a bomb in the base or something, and you've got to escape as quick as possible or something. But yeah, overall, it's a really fun game, but it is limited at this point in time. You know, you can feel the age of it. Combat's not very good. You sort of have to just hang about on corners and then sort of punch them when they come down. It's a bit clunky. The shooting's not great either. And enemies and things do respawn, but also items respawn. So you could go into a truck and it loads the back of the truck inside, and you'll see a ration. So you can go in, pick that ration up, come out, go back in, and the ration's there. So it's a nice way to stock up on ammo and health. But unfortunately, the enemies are the same at times. But yeah, overall, it's still a solid game, and I'd probably give it about a 7 out of 10. I always wanted them to remake that in the style of the newer games. Instead of doing all these Big Boss prequels, I would have liked to have seen how they did these, but when playing it, you sort of see that it's kind of what Metal Gear Solid was, really. So if they did do a remake, everyone would just compare it to that game, even though that one had it in before Metal Gear Solid. So maybe they should just leave that as it is. Then there was Metal Gear Solid Snake. That was the sequel. It was also on here, and it's pretty much the same. Kind of improves the visuals. The gameplay's pretty much the same. Though I think this is the one where it introduced the radar. So you had like a screen in the corner where it'd be made up of like maybe 4 squares by 4 squares, so you could see each area above you. So imagine the screen you're looking at now in this area is the first square in, say, the middle, and then if you go right, there's another square there, and there's another square on the left, one at the top, one at the bottom, and then one at the top and bottom of those two on the right and left. So you could see ahead of stuff. You could get binoculars like you could in the first game, and obviously it's not 3D, so you can't zoom in, but the way they did it was it would just scroll the screen up so you could see what was in front or below, or whichever way you wanted to look. Yeah, in that game you also fight Big Boss, so he's the bad guy now. You take him out, but again it's pretty much the same. But I suppose it is improved slightly. So if I had to give that one a score as well, I would probably give that 7.5 out of 10. I think. Yeah, we'll go with the 0.5s as well for these reviews. Yeah, so that was the early Metal Gear games on the MSX. But there was also one that I actually did have back in the day, and I didn't even really know at the time. I think it was like after Metal Gear Solid 1, and I just happened to go back to my parents' well, back in my parents' house at that time, and looked up in the loft, dug out the NES because I wanted to have a retro sort of. I was in the retro phase at that point, wanting to go back and check all the games out, and I realised that I actually had Metal Gear Snake's Revenge on the NES. Yeah, this was out probably, when was this? 1991 this came out. So this was probably one of the last games I think I had on the old NES, because at 91 I would have been totally obsessed with that blue dude right there, to be fair. So yeah, it's kind of strange seeing it. You know, you've even got like a Konami poster in here still. There's only one thing as exciting as our hit video game, as our 10-hit video games. Yeah, it's even got an advert for, I don't know if you can see it, but the Metal Gear Solid. Well, it's not the original Metal Gear. I keep calling it Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear for the NES, which was kind of I think it was a remake of the MSX one, but these NES games are sort of regarded as the weaker versions of those MSX titles. No way. I've even got that's crazy. I even got my old passcodes. I don't know if they were going to show up because it's like gold ink, but yeah. I got off the train at the enemy HQ, and then I did another one after where I got the passwords again because I had better weapons by that point. So I don't think I got that far, but again, this one was kind of like Metal Gear Solid as well. I think there was a tank. There's a tank like in Metal Gear Solid. You rescued hostages again, like the original. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Just worse, I think. It's not as good as the MSX titles. I think it was I don't think it was an official game either. I think it was an unofficial one where Kojima wasn't really involved with these. So nowadays, this Snake's Revenge is considered non-canon. So none of this really happened in it. But yeah, it was a fun game. But for me at the time, when I was playing it as a kid, it was kind of different to all the other games that I had at that time. You had like the likes of, Turtles, Contra, Mega Man sort of thing, where you would run in and you would, just shoot the enemy with whatever gun the game gave you, whereas this one, it's like the MSX ones as well, but for me this was like the first one I played, so it was completely different because in this game you were kind of weak. You didn't have much ammo, you didn't have many guns at your disposal, and you were better off hiding from the enemy. And that's one of the appeals of this game. I think stealth, when it's done right, can make the player feel more powerful than how you would feel if you had a million guns on your shoulders. I feel like, there's a greater sense of achievement when you feel like you're getting the better of a game. You've beaten the AI kind of thing. You've won. Every time you get through a room without getting caught, it's like, yeah, I did it. And your heart beats as well. It gets really tense at times when guards could be coming at you, and you're just hiding. Yeah, and that was a great feeling with that game. But I think as a kid, it wasn't really up there as one of my favourite NES games. It was just it was a different thing, but I think it was really hard at the time. I don't think I obviously didn't do it, so it was one that I just sort of forgot about. But it's nice that I've got it. I'm really pleased that I saw Metal Gear before Metal Gear Solid. But yeah, that's that one. If I had to give that a score, I'd probably give that a 6 out of 10, because I don't think it's as good as what the original ones were. So that's that one. Then we're on to about 98, 99 now. And this would be Metal Gear Solid 1 on the PlayStation 1. I remember eagerly awaiting this game. I remember when I got it, it came through the post. I ordered it from Gameplay, which was like a sort of a mail order game specialist store back in like the 90s. You used to see it in advertised in like the PlayStation magazines, and they would just list like double page spread of just constant games and peripherals and stuff. And I got it from there, and it came in the morning. And this was like, when would this have been? Probably like year 8 of school, maybe year 7 of like secondary school, which was like the biggest school that you go to when you're a bit older. I was probably like 13, 14 at this point. I remember getting it, and it came through, but then we had to go to school, and my mum would take me and one of my friends would come to my house and we would go together. And I remember sitting in the back with him, and I got it out, and I looked at the back of the box and it said 2 discs, and I was like, oh my god, it's on 2 discs, this game must be absolutely huge. And you know, at that point I didn't really know any better, like why it would be 2 discs, but you just think, shit, it's like 2 discs worth of a game here, man. But yeah, and yeah, it didn't disappoint. There was even a demo of I don't know if you can see that, but Silent Hill in there as well. Yeah, it really didn't disappoint me. I remember playing it first on the, where is it, the magazine, official PlayStation magazine. I had the demo disc number 42, which is perhaps the greatest demo disc ever made. It had about 20 playable demos on there, a load of Net Heroes ones, which are these like homebrew, homemade sort of games. And it had a really long Metal Gear demo. I think you got up to like the Dark Chief, I think. And it was fantastic. What a game, you know. And the review in here as well, it fucking spoiled the game. Look, why the hell, just to go off on a bit of a tangent now, why the hell would you review a game and have a double page spread of a load of cutscenes and shit from the game, and even go to the point of showing you, if you see on the bottom corner there, the 2 ending scenes with Archon. You know, and I'm pretty sure they even spoiled the Psycho Mantis trick in here, because I'm sure I knew it before I actually got to it, which was really annoying. But yeah, they gave it a 10 out of 10, and to be honest, I would give it a 10 as well. I think it's perhaps one of the greatest games ever made, and its influence is still shown to this day, not just in Metal Gear franchise itself, but in loads of other games. You know, it's like the Uncharted of like PS3 generation. That game, the way it was cinematic, the way you would have that close-up shot when Drake crawls through a gap, you know, the cinematicness of that game, you know, the set pieces, that's been influenced in loads of games, you know. Assassin's Creed's even done it now, you know, and Metal Gear was like that. That was the one that, for me, was sort of the one before it, you know. After that game came out, you know, whoops, nearly broke that. After that game came out, every other game was trying to be Metal Gear. It was trying to have stealth in it. Even games that never even bothered to have stealth before. You know, I remember the one year, because Tomb Raider was every year back then, and one of the Tomb Raiders after that just had stupid stealth bits in it. I can't remember if it was 3, but I know for a fact Chronicles had it in. It even had like a Metal Gear Solid level, and then when Metal Gear Solid 2 came out, Angel of Darkness was trying to do stealth again. They just did it awfully. You know, at the time of Metal Gear releasing, Siphon Filter also came out, and I think that was also a great game, but that was more of an action shooter with a cheesy story that was less serious than Metal Gear. But they were both great games. I think Metal Gear 10, Siphon Filter 1 and 9. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid 1 is an amazing game from start to finish, and I've completed it countless times and I still enjoy it every time. I cannot say too much more about that game because I want to do a review on it for Metal Gear Month, so we'll talk more about that one later. But then after Metal Gear, what came next? Well, for me, Metal Gear Solid Special Missions came next. This was a data disc add-on, so you needed to have the disc for this game. So what would happen, you'd put this disc in, and before it booted up properly, it would tell you to insert either disc 1 or 2 from here. It would check the disc, and then you could put this in and it would start the game properly. So yeah, kind of think of this as like an early version of like some DLC, and it was essentially just a bunch of VR missions. It was full of VR missions. So you had a small collection of VR missions in the first game, but this one kind of built upon that and introduced a load more different types. So you'd have like combat ones where you would use all the weapons in the game, and you'd have to destroy either human guards or these like crystal targets, and it was all done in like a Tron sort of neon glowy sort of environment, as if you were inside a computer. There was stealth mini missions. Each mission would probably only be like between 30 and 2 minutes long at most. Usually the stealth missions would be you start at point A and you have to get to point B, but along the way there might be cameras, trapdoors, guards, all sort of manner of obstacles for you to try and sneak through. Then you had, what else? There was combat, stealth, there was sort of special missions as well, like weird ones where you could get like a giant genome soldier and you had to take him out. There was also, what do you call it, mystery missions. So these were like these VR murder mystery type missions. So like you would go into a room and you instantly see a guard on the floor, and then in front of him there's like this security camera on a wall, but the security camera's been knocked off, and then the game sort of tells you whoever knocked off the camera is the murderer. So then when you go through into the main area, there's like 3 guards lined up against the wall, and there's 2 normal guards, and then there's this giant one in the corner, and he's got like this big saw, like Looney Tunes sort of lump on his head, so you know it's him, and then you just have to grab him and drag him back to the crystal thing to accuse that person. Yeah, it was really fun. It kind of got the stealth right, because it kind of introduced new sort of ways to do it. It always made me interested in seeing a Metal Gear Solid 2 on the PS1, just to see what they would have done with the stealth gameplay, because there's a few sections in here where you're sneaking around avoiding cameras and guards that are done really well, and it's a shame there wasn't more of that in the original. But perhaps the main draw of this game, as you can probably tell by the box, was that you could play as the cyborg ninja. Now, when I heard that when the game was coming out, I was so excited, because he was probably one of the cooler characters in the game, in a game full of cooler characters. So yeah, you had to complete most of the game to unlock him, I think. And when you did, I was kind of disappointed, because it essentially amounts to about 2 missions, and it's just killing guards, I think, and you have a time limit, and like it was just a tiny little warehouse type area, and you didn't really, I thought you could have gone back in the main game as the ninja, because he has his sword, you can run around, you can do a cartwheel, I think he has like a stomp as well, that stomp he does in the boss fight, and yeah, you use the sword. But yeah, it was just 2 missions, I think, and it was kind of disappointing. What else was there? There was also a photo mode, so you can sort of see on the back of the box here. You could take pictures of Mei Ling and Naomi. Yeah, if that's your sort of thing, then yeah, you'll enjoy it. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid Special Missions, it is just VR missions, so it's not going to appeal to everyone. There's no story, so that side of the Metal Gear sort of falls flat in this one. It's pure gameplay, but the gameplay that's there is really fun, and some of the later ones are quite challenging. So it's tough to recommend, but if anyone hasn't played it and they are a fan of Metal Gear, especially the first game, I would say try it, because if you like the VR missions in that one, you're going to love them in this, to be fair. But yeah, don't get hyped up with the ninja, because it is just a tiny bit of the game. So yeah, if I had to give this one a review score, I would probably say, I'd probably give this a 7 as well, to be fair, because it's not a bad game, but it's not worthy of being like a full price game. It is just an add-on. It's a supplement to the original, and it was kind of released like that. They knew it, they weren't trying to hide that. But yeah, it's not an essential Metal Gear game, but it is a fun one to play. So yeah, that was Metal Gear Solid Special Missions. I think it's called VR Missions elsewhere, but in the UK it was Special Missions. Right, so what's the next one? The next one is Metal Gear Solid 2. Yeah, so Metal Gear Solid 2 was the next game that I had, and this is perhaps the single most hyped I've ever been for a game that's been released. So yeah, straight after Metal Gear Solid 1, I was a huge fan of the franchise. I even did a school technology project around Solid Snake. I essentially built, in my graphics design, a Metal Gear Solid 2 collector's edition. So I drew a box out and made loads of little goodies with it, and made my own version of the box, which I can't actually find at the minute, but it's around this place somewhere. So yeah, needless to say, I was well up for this game. I remember getting a magazine called PSW in the UK, which was PlayStation World. It was that really thick magazine, if anyone remembers it, and the first issue came with a memory card. And back then, getting a free memory card for like £2 with a magazine was fucking brilliant. And eventually that magazine started doing DVDs, and one of them was a DVD with the Metal Gear Solid 2 E3 trailer, which was about 5 minutes long. And I remember watching that again and again every day up until the release of this. That was probably a good year before it came out. I was so excited for it. I just couldn't wait. And then I got it, and and then I got it, and I loved it. But I also, I loved it. It was like what would I say? It was like your favourite food, but it's that one time when you cook it, but you don't quite do it right. So you're eating it and you're loving it because it's your favourite meal, but it doesn't taste as good as that last time you had it. So it's kind of got that little bit of, it's not as good as it. I think, I hyped it up in my head so much. I used to discuss theories of Metal Gear Solid 1, what the sequel would be with my friends, and, I brought a load of these figures for it. You can see them up there, and then there's ones here. I don't know if you can see them. So I was well on board, and then then I got it, and it was a different game to what I thought. I mean, I even brought, where is it? One sec. Ugh. Sorry. Yes, so I even brought Zone of Enders, like a lot of people did, purely for the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo that was included in it. They made the wise move of putting it on the actual disc as well. Yeah, and I played that demo more than I played Zone of Enders, and I played it non-stop. But the problem was, and then when it was released in the PlayStation magazine, the demo was even longer. But the problem with it was the tanker mission, and it was near enough all of the tanker mission. And for anyone that has played Metal Gear Solid 2, would know that the tanker mission is the only time you get to play as Solid Snake, because the big shell bit, you're just playing as Raiden, and he is nowhere near as interesting, as cool and likeable as Snake. But that tanker mission, I'll talk about that first. The tanker mission is near enough perfect, but I will say it suffers in the later section when you go into the tanker. You've gone down into like the engine room or whatever it is, and you're going into that corridor, that really long dark corridor, and then you have the fight with the soldiers, and then you would go into the main bit with the actual good soldiers, the Commander Dolph or whatever his name is, his team, the SEALs or whatever. I feel from there onwards it's sort of rushed. Like, I was expecting to explore a bit more of the tanker because it's a big ass fucking ship, and I would have liked to have explored more. And I also know when, at the end of the tanker section, when Ocelot Liquid, he takes control of Ray inside it, and he sort of destroys the ship and jumps out. I know that you would have had to have played that in the original version, because you have to run back out of the ship, and there's like water crashing through. I really would have liked to have seen that, because that looked awesome from the early trailers that they showed of the water gushing through. So I know a lot of this game was cut. There was also a bit in the end of the game. I think you were going to end up fighting Solidus on the George Washington Bridge, the Hudson River. The Hudson River 2 years ago. You'd have to fight in there, but because of the 9/11 stuff, they sort of changed it. So this game was kind of a victim of a lot of cuts. But the tank section was great. It took everything that was good about Metal Gear and it improved it. The controls were tighter. Snake could do more moves. You could do a roll to land into a prone position. You could have a first-person view to aim. So shooting was a lot better in this game than it was in the original. You could hold up guards this time, and you could point the gun at their privates or their head. They would actually panic and start shaking, and usually they would drop dog tags, which was like the game's collectible, and sometimes they would drop rations and ammo and stuff like that. You could hang off ledges now. You could drop down to areas below. You could what else could you do? You could grab enemies easier. One of my main problems with the original game was trying to sneak up behind someone and grab them without them being alerted. So in this one, you could run behind them, punch them, grab them, and you could either choke them out, or what else? You could choke them out, or you could knock them out. And you could also hide people this time, so you could pick up the body instead of in the original when you knock someone out, they get up, you can't do anything, and when you kill them, they fade away. In this one, when you kill people and when you knocked them out, the bodies would remain on screen, and that totally changed how you would approach stealth. You could no longer just run through and silently kill people, because there's a risk of another guard walking around on his patrol seeing it. So you had to think of where you would take an enemy out and where you would put the body. So you could put bodies in lockers, which was so much fun. The game also had some shadow lighting effects with stealth. So in certain corners of the tanker, the lights in the building room would cast you a shadow. So if you were on a corner, sometimes your shadow would be cast out into the corridor. So a guard walking up would see your shadow now. So you had not just sound, footprints, but there's also shadows that you had to think about. So the stealth was raised up a level. Enemies would radio in for help this time, and you could shoot the radios out if they were going to call to stop them. And then when teams come in, they would actually search through an area as a group. They would check in lockers. You could shoot a locker to sort of make the door sort of like buckle a bit, and then they would see that, I think, oh, is he in there? And they would go in there and look in there. And these guards that come in would be stronger than the normal grunts, because they would have this riot shield. So like if you were using your pistol, you'd have to shoot that a few times to smash it. And they would have shotguns as well. So it was really quite tense when someone got a call through, or even when people didn't get a call through. So if someone's on a radio and they're saying all clear here, and you were to come up and take them out, say if they were going all clear, bang, they got killed, the person on the other end of that radio would be like, respond, please respond. Why isn't it responding? And then he would send out a search team to see what's going on. Same way if you killed him after he said his thing, because the guard would want to hear him again in a few minutes. And it was really intense trying to figure out where you could hide and try to avoid these bigger groups of enemies that come in looking for you. It also had a massive attention to detail. There was this bit in the tanker, there was like a bar, and you could shoot out every bottle that was on this bar. And then there was this other room, this like storage room with this metal shelf, and it had like watermelons on it and things, and you could shoot your gun at these and it would just blow it all up, and it was so cool. Visually, this game was an absolute masterpiece, and it really pushed the PS2 to the absolute limits. I mean, you can go back and play this now, when we're at the end of the PS4's life cycle. You could play this original one, and you would still think, bloody hell, this is a good looking game. Yeah, it really was a technical showpiece. How they did it, I don't know. This time around, Snake had a proper face. In the original, it was just like a blurry sort of, you had to use your imagination. But this time they had proper facial animations. Cutscenes were a lot better in this. Though the problem with it is he did sort of ramble on a bit. There was a lot of waffle in this game compared to the first one. Yeah, but that tanker section was great. Then, because I'm rambling on with Metal Gear 2 now, I need to get moving. Yeah, this one was awesome. There were so many cool little things in that tanker section. Snake looked great. Then you got to the shell, and you started playing as Raiden, this new recruit, and that's where the game sort of got a bit crap for me. I didn't so much mind Raiden. I kind of liked the idea of seeing Snake through someone else's eyes and seeing how much cooler he is and all that. It made him look cool and everything. Yeah, great. But the main problem with Raiden was I didn't like his voice, but it was Rose. Rose was like your Mei-Ling on your codec, but unlike Mei-Ling, she would ring you up all the time, and she's like your girlfriend, I think, in it. And she keeps going, Jack, do you know what day it is today, Jack? And he's like, Rose, I can't remember, Rose. And she just constantly does it throughout the game, and she's so fucking annoying. It's like, it's the day they met or something, their anniversary, and they go on about this like King Kong Godzilla thing at the Empire State Building. She just gets in the way. Imagine the bit in Metal Gear Solid 1 when you're climbing up Metal Gear X and Snake is constantly getting called by Archon, who's telling him what he's doing to figure out the cards. And every time you go up a ladder, you get this another codec call. It's like that, but all the way through the game. So fucking frustrating. And one of my issues with this game as well was the Raiden section, where you're on this oil shell in the middle of the ocean, and it's this bright orange shell, and all you see is orange throughout the whole fucking game. Sure, there's indoor bits where it's like officey type things, but it's just orange everywhere else. You walk along these struts, and it's the same. It's like a hexagonal shape, and then it's like more struts around to make a big hexagon with like walkways across each one. And there's like strut A and strut B or whatever it is, strut 1 and 2. But it's not as good of an environment as Shadow Moses. And for me, that was one of the weaker bits of it. Also, in the big shell bit, all you tend to do is go around defusing bombs for the first part of that mission. You have this coolant spray and you're just spraying these bombs to freeze them. And that's all you fucking do. You go around doing bomb after bomb after bomb. Then you get to this boss fight, the Fat Man, and he's the bomb guy. And then what do? You're trying to fight him while he's on rollerblades, weirdly enough, skating around this top of this shell, putting more bombs down, so you're just doing more bombs again, and it's just fucking annoying. It's a really crap bit of it. But the gameplay from the tanker is still there, and it does suffer in a way because they reuse like the watermelon shelf that I was on about, and the bottles and the newspapers and things that were in the tanker in the big shell bit, so it kind of feels like you just sort of repeated everything I've just done. You also get a tutorial bit in that part of the game as well as the tanker, so it kind of feels like you're stopping and starting and doing another game. Another criticism I have with this game would be I don't like the bosses in this as much. I think Fortune was a weak fight. The fact that you couldn't hit her. Vamp was pretty cool. You didn't get to fight Ocelot either, which was disappointing. Fat Man was a bit crap. Who else was there? The Harrier fight was cool, but again, the way the story is structured, it's supposed to be like the events of 1, so a lot of it is similar. You have a ninja in this one as well. You fight the Harrier instead of a Hind D. You have to escort someone, a scientist, instead of Arconic's Emma, which is his sister, but she's even worse. She's just afraid of everything because she can't walk. She's just better off just knocking her out and dragging her across the bugs and through the water. She's a right pain. And then at the end of it, she dies anyway, so it's just like, what the fuck. Solidus, though, he was cool, but he wasn't as good as Liquid. And I think that sums up the whole game, really. It's good, but it's not as good as the original Metal Gear Solid. So if I had to give this a score, I'd probably give this a solid 8 out of 10, because it is a good game, but it's just not as good as Metal Gear Solid 1. But it does improve a lot of things. So yeah, it also came with the making of Metal Gear Solid, which is a really good DVD. It gives you some behind the scenes footage, shows you how they made the levels. Kojima used Lego to build out the sets of each area, which I think was just genius. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for that one. Okay, finally onto another game. Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. I think this sort of came between 2 and 3. That's where I'm going to put it for now. Twin Snakes was a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1 on the GameCube only. It improved the visuals, it re-recorded the dialogue, changed a few voice actors though, which wasn't very good, and changed some of the music as well, because I think the guy who did the original score kind of plagiarised a lot of it, so they couldn't use all the theme songs. But it also introduced gameplay elements from Metal Gear Solid 2. So now you could shoot in first person, you could hang off ledges, you could do the roll, all those sort of moves you could do in 2, you could do in this. But the problem was, they remade the game's areas pretty much exactly like they were in the original. And the original wasn't designed for these new movesets. There's the bit early on where you'd be in a room where they hold the tanker, you come out the vent at the top and you're on a walkway. In the original you have to walk around there and dodge all the cameras, but in this new one you could just jump off the edge and hang and drop. And it makes the game too easy. I didn't mention it in number 2, but in that game you also had a tranquilizer gun, so you could do a non-lethal run through. And they also give you that in this, which just makes the game too easy. And visually as well, even though it's improved, I think it looks worse because they've got this like sort of plasticky look to their faces, and it kind of looks a bit freaky. Granted, it's detailed and it does look nice, but I think one age is better because they haven't got that detail, and it kind of suits that style that it was going for. But perhaps the worst thing in this game was the cutscenes, because they ruined most of them by doing these over-the-top Matrix sort of moves. I've done a video on it for Metal Gear Month, so you'll see it all in that, what I mean. But imagine the Hind D fight. Liquid shoots the missiles at Snake. In this, Snake jumps in the air, he surfs on a missile for a bit, then jumps backflips off it, pulls out his Stinger missile while in the air, and then shoots and hits the Hind D. Out of nowhere. It's just weird. And I think this is the inferior version of Metal Gear Solid 1 in my opinion. Even though controls are better, visually it looks better technically, I still think the original is the better version. And if you had to play one, I would always pick the original PlayStation 1. There's a reason why people remember the original and they don't remember Twin Snakes. It's because it wasn't as good. So if I had to give this a score, I would give this a 6 out of 10, because for me it just shits over the original. But yeah, I can see it's a good game, but for me, nah, it's not as good. And I think 2's a better game, and I think I gave 2 an 8. So yeah, not really worth it. But yeah, so that's Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. Covered that quite quickly. I need to catch up. This is now onto Metal Gear Solid Subsistence. No, Substance, sorry. Subsistence is the 3 ones, isn't it? So this one was a sort of upgrade of number 2. I think at this point, Metal Gear Solid finally went on to other consoles. I think the Xbox 360, not Xbox 360, the Xbox got this one, and it was also re-released on the PS2. So it had the entire Metal Gear Solid game, but you also had about 350, I think it says on the back. Yeah, 350 VR missions and then 150 alternate ones. And it also had these like what-if scenarios called Snake Tales, which you could go for a snake on the big shell and on the tanker and do a different sort of story. And when I first heard about them, I thought, oh, brilliant. It's what Snake was doing on the big shell during the main game. So I was thinking, well, there's a point in the game where one of the struts gets destroyed and certain bits are blocked off. So I thought, oh, you're gonna see Snake running through them doing things as Pliskin. But unfortunately it didn't really do that. It was sort of its own story setup. There was one where Meryl was working with Garukovich on the tanker, and she was like a traitor, and then she's getting killed at the end or something. But it was all told through text only, and that was a shame as well, because it kind of felt cheap. And some of the missions as well, they were quite long, but they had massive difficulty spikes. That one with Meryl, there's a point where you have to escape through that corridor where you would have that gunfight, They're a really long corridor that's dark. And they just spawn a shitload of enemies there, and you have to just try and run through it and get to this door and turn the valve to get out. And that took me ages back in the day. That was such a bullshit difficulty spike. Yeah, and there was also, on the PS2 version at least, I don't think it was on the Xbox One, there was a extreme skateboarding game or something Konami were doing to try and compete with Tony Hawk at the time. So you had this big shell level with Solid Snake and Raiden that you could skate around on, which was kind of cool, to be fair, but it was nowhere near as good as Tony Hawk's. And there's a reason why you don't see that Konami skateboarding game anymore. It also had a document of Metal Gear Solid 2, which was kind of another making of DVD that you had some of the assets on there that you could look at, I think, as well. But yeah, essentially it's the same game, but with more content, more VR missions and other stuff. So I would give this version of Metal Gear Solid 2 8.5 out of 10, because it still has all the problems I have with 2, but there's more content there, and it is good stuff to play. The VR missions are the same as in the PS1 game, really, same sort of thing. There's also VR missions that do murder mysteries in this one as well, I think, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's decent enough.